A few years ago, most of the robot combat events we went to were in Wisconsin, but after bet spots stopped happening, there haven't been as many events that were close enough for us to go to. So this year we decided we'd be willing to travel a little bit further to go to an event, and decided to attend the Brawl at the Mall QuadCon hosted by SEMO Robotics. This is the farthest we've ever traveled for a competition, and I think it was worth it. So enjoy the ride while I tell you how we prepared for it. For Hellspear, we printed TPU pieces to cover the exposed parts of the weapon model, but in order to have enough weight for these, I had to design weapons with a 5-inch diameter. Meanwhile, I designed a body for Cheddar with supports for the wheel motors, and then I removed the bottom angle from the tooth of the blade because that's what caused it to break off, vibrate, and loosen the wheel motors last time. Croaking Hazard received 2 design upgrades. The body and front wedge are now one combined piece and no longer need to be held together with screws. It'll be easier to change the internals from one body to another in case the wedge gets damaged. We also designed a hinged fork configuration to ensure that Croaking Hazard has the low ground even if the rest of the wedge gets raised off the ground. We also have 2 new bots. Remember when I showed that video of Nosferatu driving around in my basement? That was an old design of the bot that my dad, also known as Driver 2, won in a raffle at Michigan Mashup. We used it to make a vertical spinner bot called Nuclear Frogout for Driver 5. Our main goal for this bot was to build it with parts we already had, so it uses the same weapon as the Fingertech Viper kit. And, for the first time ever, Driver 2 has his own bot called Free Tacos. He named it that because he thought it'd be funny if the announcer yelled out free tacos and everyone thought they were actually giving out free tacos. The bot is just a wedge bot, so it'll probably be the easiest one to repair. The Robot Combat Events page said that this would be a double elimination competition, but when we got there, they told us it would be 3-round Swiss. But instead of 2-in-1 bots automatically advancing to the single elimination tournament, only the top 8 bots would move on. This meant that even if a bot won 2 out of 3 fights, if Challenge didn't rank them in the top 8, they would be eliminated. They also had 2 arenas here so they could run multiple fights at the same time, which led to the most chaotic start to an event our team ever had. Cheddar and Hellspear were scheduled to fight at the exact same time, and to make things worse, Hellspear's opponent was a hammer saw, so I had to put the aluminum top plate on, but I wouldn't have time to do that because Hellspear's fight was the second fight of the first round. I had to decide between having Driver 2 drive Hellspear right now, or using Hellspear's postponement right now, and I chose the second option because I would rather fight with the stronger top plate. so I told them Hellspear was using its postponement for this fight, but I'm not sure if they actually gave it to me or if they just moved Hellspear down the list and did other fights from round 1 first. I don't really remember. But anyway, Cheddar's opponent was Creepy Creeper, who didn't seem that intimidating because of how high up their spinner was. In fact, the biggest problem I had was my weapon spinning too fast. Again. I don't know why putting the throttle at 50% makes it sound like it's at 100%, but I guess I'm just gonna have to be careful how fast I spin the blade at this event so my battery doesn't die. It didn't matter in this fight because it was over in 16 seconds. There was no time to celebrate because I had to get Hellspear ready for its fight against Croaking, which would be coming up soon. While I was doing that, Croaking Hazard went to fight, and then Driver 5 came back holding a destroyed Croaking Hazard and talking about some opponent who was supposedly worse than Pablo. Were they actually that bad? Well, here's the fight. Croaking Hazard did not win the judge's decision. Next was Nuclear Frogout versus Megabyte. This was another fight I did not see in person, but from what I heard, Megabyte hit Frogout so hard that they lost power. In the beginning, there were some big hits that Megabyte was mostly getting the better of, and then Nuclear Frogout stopped moving. They were able to start moving again, but their weapon wasn't active. Megabyte also stopped using their weapon at one point, but Frogout couldn't push them because they kept losing and regaining power. Eventually, Megabyte's weapon spun up again and they flipped Nuclear Frogout upside down, and they were counted out. After putting the aluminum top plate on Hellspear and just barely having enough weight for it, I was ready for my fight against Croaking. At first, they pushed me into the wall and hit me with the hammer saw, bending up part of the top plate. But Croaking's hammer saw never spun up again, and their drive wasn't functioning perfectly, so Hellspear had free reign to just hit them over and over again. I had to make sure I was hitting the back and the sides of the bot and not the wedge. I could do more damage in the back, and if I hit the wedge I might flip over, and I wouldn't be able to move with my bent top plate. Croaking was still pushing Hellspear around, but overall they weren't doing much. I kept landing hits until time was up, and the judges gave the win to Hellspear. This was Mid-Cutter Hellspear's first win that wasn't a forfeit. It's nice to know that this bot isn't completely incapable of being destructive. The very first opponent for free tacos was Frosty, a Palm Beach horizontal spinner kit. It looked like this would be an easy fight. Frosty had a hard time getting space to spin up their weapon, and even when they did, it didn't spin very fast. Free tacos just pushed them around and pinned them for most of the fight, and they won the decision. Time for round 2. Cheddar was fighting the bot that destroyed Croaking Hazard last round, and I wasn't that scared of it.
Judges are ready, the drivers are ready.
Okay, so it hits hard. I expected that. I'll just be defensive and get the better of the exchange every time we go head to head.
Paul Ventimiglia said it's all going to be... He takes the former champion to the screws and is bouncing around like mad. Has no stability. Tombstone is in big time trouble, Chris. Look at this. He stops the blade. Is that a momentary testing or is it done? Got any control?
Now this presented a big problem because I didn't know my blades could snap in half like that, and I don't know what to do about this. When my basic PLA blades broke in half, I upgraded them to Dormic. I thought that would solve the problem. When my Dormic blades break in half, what am I supposed to do? Retire? The only good news about this is that although the middle of the blade broke, the teeth didn't. None of them snapped off like last time. So it looks like removing the bottom angle gave them all the extra durability they need. Also, if you're wondering why Cheddar stopped moving, it's because venture capital knocked the back off of both drive motors and shattered the magnets in one of them, and although the weapon motor was still in one piece, it wouldn't spin, so I can only assume that the same thing happened to it. Also, my frame was split down the middle, so I had to completely rebuild the bot using spare parts I had right there. I didn't need to do this immediately because I had another Cheddar that was ready to fight, but this is what I would have to spend all my spare time on now. Next, Free Tacos was fighting 21CM, another undercutter. This bot's weapon was much more powerful than the previous one, and they did some damage to Free Tacos' wedge. but 50 seconds in, their weapon stopped spinning, and the fight became a pushing match. 21CM's left wheel also didn't work. This made it even easier for Free Tacos to do what they do best: get under their opponent and push them around. They even pinned 21CM a few times at the end. Free Tacos won the decision, which made them 2-0, so now they had a very good chance of getting in the top 8. Hellspear's second opponent was Onyx. Well, they were exactly the reason I put the protection on the motor, so now we're gonna see if it worked. This fight went bad, like worse than last time. Hellspear was even worse set up to go weapon to weapon with the shorter blade. The motor protection got destroyed immediately, and Onyx used their special strategy of becoming a vertical spinner to disable Hellspear's weapon, and then started destroying the rest of the bot. I tried driving backwards to avoid taking damage to my motor, but then Onyx just ripped apart my wheels. There was one final big hit that sent Hellspear against the wall to be counted out. I was still getting a little bit of traction and might have been able to delay the countdown if I kept driving in one direction, but I didn't bother trying. It was clear that Hellspear wouldn't win this fight. Well, this is the second time this year that Hellspear has lost to Onyx, and I think they'll need another redesign if they want to stop losing to actually good horizontal spinners. This reminds me of that Carl meme, except it's Onyx telling Hellspear it'll never be a real mid-cutter. Nuclear Frogout got a bye in round 2, which really helped us because we needed that extra time to fix it. So the only fight left for us was Croaking Hazard versus Blackboard. This spot seemed intimidating, especially because they got second place in one of the bet spots competitions, but I guess they were having trouble getting the bot working this time. This match got postponed when it first appeared on the board, and when it finally happened, Blackboard's weapon wasn't spinning. So Croaking Hazard could go right up to them and lift them as many times as they wanted. They could also get stuck to Blackboard and need to be separated, which is what happened 26 seconds into the fight. When the fight resumed, Croaking Hazard flipped Blackboard over twice, but then their drum spinner started working, and they started throwing Croaking Hazard across the arena. All of a sudden, Croaking Hazard was fighting from behind, but then Blackboard flipped upside down and couldn't move, so they got counted out, and Croaking Hazard got the win. Cheddar's third opponent was Jazz, which was a plastic version of the Fingertech Viper lifter kit. In this fight, I used the same blade I used to kill Creepy Creeper. Unlike all of the other blades I had been using, this blade was made of Polymax PLA, which supposedly bends a little more than Dormic and is less hard. I don't know if this made a difference in this fight or if Jazz just has an extremely strong front wedge, but either way, I was not able to do any damage to it. All I did was rip a little piece off of the lifter. Even when I tried to hit the wheels, I couldn't do much. So my goal was to hit Jazz just to show aggression, I guess. Since this fight would likely last the full 2 minutes, I had to be extra careful not to spin my blade too fast. My favorite moment of this fight was when I started circling them like a shark, as the driver of Jazz said after this fight. Cheddar did get pinned a few times, but that didn't make up for all the hits I delivered throughout the fight. Cheddar won the judge's decision and was now 2-1, but they weren't guaranteed to get in because they might not get in the top 8. Eventually, I finished soldering the drive motors on the other Cheddar, but when I tested it, they wouldn't turn. I could go forward and back just fine, but the motors didn't spin at all when I tried to turn left or right. I didn't know what to do about this, but it didn't really matter. All of Cheddar's fights from now on would be in the single elimination tournament, and any fight where I take so much damage that I need to use another Cheddar probably wouldn't be a fight I'd win, and in that case I wouldn't need a fight anymore. So I put Cheddar number 2 back in the box and only worried about Cheddar number 1 from that point on.
Free Tacos! You're on deck!
Free Tacos was up against Juniper, who is from Team Anxiety Attack. This is the same team that made Josh, the bot who battled Cheddar for 3rd place at one of the Bet Spots competitions, and fought Hellspear at Battle in the Burbs. This bot was a lot more dialed in than Josh. Their weapon was actually spinning, and they used it to beat up Free Tacos. Free Tacos was able to get underneath them some of the time, but as time went on, their wedge took more and more damage. Eventually, Juniper got Free Tacos stuck against the wall, but decided to knock them loose. Then there was this big hit that sent Free Tacos flying and caused Juniper to power off. Juniper was completely inactive from this point on, but Free Tacos kept ramming into them to keep the fight going, as a way of paying Juniper back for freeing them earlier. Free Tacos could have gotten a knockout and gone 3-0, but they forced the fight to go to the distance, and Juniper won the decision. I think it's also worth mentioning how some of the other plastic bots were doing. Bub was my biggest fear before this event, but they were having a hard time getting their weapon to work. They fought Venture Capital in round 3, and their weapon immediately came loose and stopped working by itself, but Venture Capital randomly stopped moving. The fight probably lasted about 30 seconds, and Bub was the winner. All of a sudden, the bots we were initially scared of didn't seem as threatening. Speaking of Bub, there was a bot from the same team as them called Levi, or Levy. I heard one of the announcers call it Levi, so I'm gonna call it that. They had an intimidating vertical spinner and were fighting Hellspear in round 3. The Hellspear with wheel armor was in no condition to fight after the last match, so I had to use the one without wheel armor. The fight started with 2 big hits, the second of which got Hellspear's weapon stuck under the arena wall and disabled Levi's weapon. And then Levi somehow also got stuck on the arena. After the bots were freed, Hellspear had trouble driving because part of their top plate got peeled up from the first hit. They got flipped over and were able to move just fine, and landed some hits to the side of Levi, but then they got flipped over again. Now neither bot was able to move well. Levi pinned Hellspear, but had a hard time unpinning them. While this was happening, Hellspear was slowly grinding away at one of their wheels, but I think that actually helped them. That wheel looked like it was locked up, and Hellspear just loosened it. Then Hellspear ripped one of the wheels off, but right after that, they got stuck in the wall. They had already been freed once, so this would be a knockout. The countdown was going, but it was actually a countdown to the end of the 2 minutes. Hellspear made it to the closing bell, but it didn't win the judge's decision. Hellspear might have done more damage, but Levi actually had control of themselves and their opponent, which I think mattered more. This was a bit annoying because Hellspear's wheels and weapons still worked just fine. I just couldn't use them very much in this fight. Either way, I think this was one of our better fights at this event. Having that close of a fight against a bot from Sparrow Robotics feels like a win to me. Croaking Hazard's third fight was against Cow Pie, who we knew as the bot who ripped another bot in half before this event. At first, Croaking Hazard tried to get to their side, but couldn't. Cow Pie was just too wide. Then Cow Pie got stuck against the wall, and Croaking Hazard was able to get under them, but both times they were underneath, Croaking Hazard raised the lifter all the way up and lost control of Cow Pie.
I need shakedown, Leviticus.
You sure are, Driver 5, your lifter didn't even do anything.
Gotta focus on. Push into it.
Got this custom. This is a Pokemon Cup. Will from all year. Let me.
Despite all of this destruction, Croaking Hazard made it to the end, but they did not win. And now it's time for Nuclear Frogout versus Ultrasonic. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Nuclear Frogout doesn't have a good configuration to fight horizontals. I think I was gonna design a 3D printed wedge for it, but I just forgot. So they used forks, which got ripped off immediately. The first weapon-to-weapon hit was okay. The second one wasn't. It broke the weapon. Oh, never mind, it still worked, just only some of the time. But it still wasn't doing much. Ultrasonic was ripping more and more pieces off. Frogout got flipped over, but Ultrasonic wanted to keep the fight going, so they flipped them over again. Then they ripped Nuclear Frogout's weapon off. You ever wondered what would have happened if Rampage never tapped out against Jimmy? This is what would have happened. This fight also lasted the full 2 minutes, and Nuclear Frogout lost. And now it's time for single elimination. Cheddar got in. Croaking Hazard did not get in. Free Tacos got in. Hellspear did not get in. Nuclear Frogout did not get in. Though I will point out that out of all the bots that went 1 and 2, Hellspear was at the very top. This makes me wonder if they would have gotten in the tournament if they won their last fight. Free Tacos was matched up with Venture Capital in the round of 8. This would be a huge problem if Venture Capital didn't have half of its drive not working coming into this fight. They could still move around enough to hit Free Tacos when they got close, but they couldn't chase them around the arena. Free Tacos waited until their side was exposed, pinned them for 5 seconds, and then repeated. This was their strategy for the first minute of the match. After that point, there was a big hit that sent Venture Capital in the air and affected Free Tacos' drive system. It looked like the bot kept disconnecting and reconnecting to the signal from the remote. Free Tacos was showing enough movement to avoid getting counted out, but they couldn't do anything to their opponent anymore. It also didn't help that their forks were getting stuck on the floor. Venture capital couldn't drive towards free tacos either, so both bots were just driving in circles, barely engaging with each other. The fight went to a judge's decision, and somehow free tacos won. Cheddar's first bracket fight was against Juniper. At this point, I only had one of the blades with the new design left. Every other blade I had the bottom angle on the tooth. There were some more powerful bots that I would probably have to fight later in the tournament, like Frostbite and Bub, so I decided to save the more durable blade for them and use one of the less durable blades against Juniper. I thought it would be able to survive their weapon. It could not. The tooth broke off on the first hit, and now Cheddar was unbalanced and slowly vibrating itself to death. Juniper could pick its shots pretty easily now. Eventually, Cheddar's blade stopped moving, and I discovered that my wheels could no longer spin. I could only move myself around with the blade now. And then the weapon motor came loose and was dangling outside of the frame, but it could still spin. In fact, Juniper's side armor came loose and was high centering them, so the fight could go either way now. And then, a lot of things happened at once. Juniper stopped moving, so I slowed my weapon down to avoid damaging the motor more, but that made the blade stop and not be able to spin anymore. And then Juniper moved a little bit again. Both bots were laying motionless on the floor, but since Juniper was the last one to move, Cheddar Luck Next Time was the one who got counted out and eliminated. When I looked inside the bot, I found out that my drive motor stopped working because a wire had come loose from each of them. I'm not sure if that was caused more by a hit from Juniper or by the intense vibration caused by Cheddar's unbalanced blade. I guess I'm gonna have to tape down my wires when I go to the second battle on Belmont in 2 months. Free Tacos' semi-final match was with Bub. Their weapon still wasn't working so well. This was the most it was able to do. But another one of Bub's strengths was its speed. It moved so fast that if the two bots rammed into each other, Bub would just glide over the top of Free Tacos. This made it very hard for Free Tacos to maintain control of Bub. In fact, Bub was the one pushing Free Tacos around. This was the most successful pin by Free Tacos. Every other time they pushed Bub into the wall, Bub would just escape, and sometimes get a pin of their own. This was not an easy decision, and in the end, it went to Bub. So it looks like Bub did pose a threat to us after all, just not in the way we expected it to. All that was left was for Free Tacos to battle for third place, against Juniper, again. Juniper only had one side of their drive working. Gee, where have I seen this before? This would be an easy fight for Free Tacos as long as they could avoid the front of Juniper, get some good pins, and not encounter any weird remote control issues. And they were able to do all of those things. Mostly. Sometimes the other side of Juniper's drive would stop working, but whenever this happened, Free Tacos would push them until they could move again. Free Tacos got 7 good pins throughout this fight, the last of which got their forks stuck under the arena wall. After the unstick, there were only 13 seconds left, so as long as nothing stupid happened, Free Tacos would likely be the winner.
Don't take it.
Nah, that wasn't enough to affect the decision. Free Tacos won that fight and got third place. But that wasn't the only award we were competing for. Driver 5 thought Croaking Hazard was a contender for the Most Destroyed award, so we stuck around to see who won that. Bub lost its wheel armor and had its battery ripped out in the plastic Antweight final. There was another Antweight horizontal spinner that had a disabled weapon and its top plate ripped open in the round of 8, and there were probably other contenders for this award that I'm forgetting. Our last fight was at 5:02, and we waited until like 7:15 for them to announce the winner of the award. But in the end, it went to Croaking Hazard. I think the main reason they won this is because every other bot who could have gotten it already left. But it counts, and now Driver 5 has another award that has nothing to do with being in the top 3. Whatever makes her happy, I guess. You know, before this event, I was worried about a lot of things. I was worried it'd be a bad idea for a driver to have more than one bot, and we wouldn't have enough time for repairs. I was worried we'd come all this way just to not have a good time, but I think it went fine. It was just as enjoyable as any other event, and I'm satisfied with my performance. I also got this very cool SEMO Robotics hat, some pieces for my opponents. I have even more ideas how to improve my bots now. A lot of good things came from this event. This is a message to everyone out there. If you're not sure if you should go to a SEMO event, give it a try. This was my first time here, and I think it was my best event of the year so far. I had a great experience, and if we're able to make it, we'll be back next year. Until then, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching Explosive Robotics.